Sam Amick, who's been covering the NBA for 16 years for The Athletic now. It is interesting, is that I can think a guy is great, Sam. I can love him as a player, but I can also say he's got a ceiling, and it does feel like with Giannis, when he gets to the playoffs, the game slows down. It's a little more situational. There is now a book on how to defend Giannis to some degree, is there not?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Eric Spoelstra and the Heat crew, wrote that book in the playoffs last year. And night after night in that series, we were confounded by the Bucks' inability to counter and Giannis's inability to counter. And then you're seeing that trend continue this year. Now, the Drew Holiday addition was supposed to fix some of that. And I will qualify this struggle right now. I mean, not having Drew is a very big deal. But to your point, Colin, two-time MVP, a guy who, I voted for both times and Defensive Player of the Year. You expect him to be able to carry this group better than they are right now.
Yeah. It's interesting with Brooklyn. I watched them last night. I watched about half the game against the Lakers, and they got hot, and the Lakers weren't, but they're missing starters. It's one of those games I don't take a ton from. But I do think you can argue that Nets have 3 of the top 5 offensive players in terms of just, if we had a horse contest or a one-on-one contest in the NBA, Kyrie, Harden, and KD would be 3 of the top 5 guys probably. But you look at them and I think to myself, okay, what made the Warriors special wasn't just their offense. It's that Klay Thompson's a great defender and Draymond in his prime was a terrific defender. I don't think this is a championship team as it's currently constructed. Do you see it as that?
I don't, but I also then project in the playoffs and say, who's going to beat them? Because we have a lot of uncertainty right now among all the contenders. The Lakers are scuffling without Anthony Davis. But that formula, high-end offense, but top 10 defense is typically historically what you have to be a championship team. And the Nets are awful on that end. And I mean, Kevin Durant is a guy that I think is kind of going to have to be their savior defensively and play a lot of small ball and put him at the 5. And I can see that working, in short stints, but that's a lot to ask of a guy who plays like an MVP on the offensive end. And so they're so interesting. I can't remember a team with this kind of dichotomy. It doesn't mean they can't improve defensively. I think they can. It's funny, never thought I would hear this, talking to scouts about James Harden being an X factor defensively for them, because as much as the narrative with James has been that he simply doesn't defend, that in the post and at times when he puts the effort forth, he's a guy that is big and strong and has some ability on that end. They're going to have to fix it, but man, offensively, they just overwhelm you. And so I'm not ready to take them out of that discussion in terms of being a championship team by any means. I just don't know how they fix the defense.
Listen, I still don't think Embiid and Simmons are perfect together, but they're number 1 in the East. It's Tobias Harris has played well. Daryl Morey, he'll always say the right stuff, but in the end, I still don't think it works, but it's winning. So are they an interesting team at the trade deadline to you, or do you think they're just going to run it through with Doc for 1 year?
We'll see. I mean, any team that Daryl is in charge of the front office is going to be aggressive at a trade deadline. They've added some shooting that has helped on the offensive end with Seth Curry, Danny Green. Korkmaz has been good. The Tobias Harris thing to me, and admittedly, I'm going to write about him in the next couple of days. I talked to him yesterday. I think he is an incredibly important part of their program because he's not known as a star. His numbers this year are all-star worthy. You're talking 21 points, 7 boards, 50, 40, 90. Honestly, I mean, who am I to tell Doc how to coach? I think Doc needs to let him shoot a few more threes. He's not shooting a lot, but his percentages are fantastic, and they're down a little bit from last year in terms of volume. So Tobias's play is big. He's tried to get better defensively. They're a little bit deceiving analytically. If you look at the record, they look like an elite team, and I think they are. But some of the advanced numbers tell you that they're kind of teetering and kind of pushing towards mediocrity a little bit, and the shooting needs to get better, the defense needs to get better. I don't know yet what I think. And with Joel, man, MVP caliber year so far, but you're always holding your breath on the health front, just hoping that he's going to be available.
Listen, one of the few things I got right, I said Zion's body, don't outthink your eyes. that if he can shoot free throws well, he's going to live at the line because he initiates so much contact. I watched him at Duke, and I said, it's a skinny jeans league now. Nobody wants contact. It's a bunch of 6'11" guys that weigh 240. I said, this kid is Karl Malone, whereas he's just going to live at the free throw line, going to shoot 7 or 8 a night, and if he can hit 75%, he's going to give you 25 a night. I got that one right. Are you surprised at how dominant? I mean, his numbers, he leads the NBA in paint scoring, I think, by a lot. Are you surprised by Zion? What do you make of him so far?
I'm not surprised. I was really surprised at the early season struggle. It was like it was a different guy from the guy that we saw last year, where in a small sample size, he was transcendent and the kind of, player that we thought he was going to be. So that small little hiccup, I don't know if you blame kind of the post-bubble fatigue or even the conditioning and the program stuff that got impacted because the league decided to start the season earlier than people thought they were going to start. Whatever it was, he had that blip, and then he got back to doing the type of stuff that he started doing last year. He's fantastic, and New Orleans is obviously figuring it out. And I'm curious, if you spin it forward to the trade deadline, March 25th, New Orleans is a team that had been pretty widely known to be out there with some of their players, but now that you're playing a little better, does that impact how Dave Griffin sees what he wants to do?
Do you think deep down they would never admit it, but this was the year it felt like LeBron, as an aged player, was going to kind of subtly hand the baton to AD? It's like, listen, we know it's LeBron's team, but big fella, I just got out of a bubble. I'm not getting much time off. And AD came out, Sam, and he didn't have a very good offensive year. He struggled a little bit. Do you think deep down in the recesses, the Lakers are a little disappointed with AD's performance this year?
Sure. I mean, it depends on who we're talking about. Rob Pelinka, their GM, is generally kind of an uplifter, so he's certainly not going to either admit to that or maybe even has thought that. But I mean, it's hard to not have that be the takeaway. He's not been as dominant as he was last year. And with LeBron, in terms of, I don't know what the Lakers thought. I'd be pretty reticent to say that LeBron was handing the torch because he's coming off a year where he thought he should have been the MVP. He went out of his way to tell us that he thought he should have been the MVP, and that it upset him that Giannis got it. And so I feel like, LeBron had another chapter to write in terms of, wanting to go get another MVP award, which he's working on right now. But the AD component is big because when he was there, he wasn't playing all that well. And now you have a tough spot where LeBron it's a little bit like Giannis, where he's trying to carry the load, not doing very well. LeBron's doing a much better job, but this isn't what you want a couple months into the regular season, is for LeBron having to, pick up the slack with AD when he's there or not. It's just not been a good year for AD.
By the way, a minute left. I've always loved Chris Paul, but he's not very likable. But he goes to the Suns, and what do you know? The Suns are now excellent. I think he's the most underrated player in the last 10 years. I think you get it, but I don't think players want to admit it because he's hard to get along with. How do you describe him? Everywhere he goes, they win. Everywhere.
I mean, he flipped the script. He comes out of Houston with the optics around him not being very positive because it didn't work with James Harden. I give him a ton of credit. In OKC, it worked wonderfully well. That success leads to the Phoenix move, and now you're seeing the same story in a different city. Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, learning from him. I looked at the splits today, about a 12-point difference on-off floor for Chris, and that's far and away the best on the team. Devin is having a good year. They're actually a little better when Devin's not on the floor, which we've never said about Chris Paul. He just makes guys around him better. He's embracing the leadership component of this challenge, and a little bit like LeBron, his best friend. He's got that chip on his shoulder of, everybody's trying to bury me and say that I'm too old to get it done. And we're seeing that's not the case. Yeah.
God, I love watching him play. He's so old school. He's feisty. Yeah. He yells at teammates. He's my kind of guy. Sam, it's good talking to you. Keep doing your great work for the Athletic.
You got it, Colin.
All right. Good stuff.
Thanks, brother. Be good.
You bet. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.